This is Straight Up Tekken, episode 5, Types of Steps. In the last video on script, we covered the general rules of sidestepping, but now we will expand on that. There are two main types of sidesteps and sidewalks, offensive and defensive. And then there are subcategories, three of which we will call option select, empty, and positioning. Offensive and defensive are very simple. They are steps you take offensively or offensively. For example, stepping to avoid dragging off while running 2 is a defensive step. While dragging off doing one jab and down for 1 on your block in the step is offensive. But we can go further in depth, and that's where subcategories come in. The preface, an option select, is a decision you make that covers multiple situations. While it has changed from its original meaning, the spirit is still there, and option selects are a pillar of the game. For example, an option select step would be a sidestep intentionally done to beat multiple options. There's another concept known as OS movement that we will cover later, but this is one of the building blocks. Let us use Shaheen as an example. Shaheen has very weak tracking to the right side, with the exception of its homing moves and its down 4-1, which tracks right. We could simply step block to the right, but this would leave him at -1. So what can we do instead? By doing a step block left or a sidewalk depending on what our opponent on Shaheen was doing. Let's say, for example, he was doing down 4-1 and up 4-1. Stepping or walking left will OS both of these options at once, and in the case of stepping, we could block to assume essentially no risk except for the Shaheen player doing lows. On the offensive side of Shaheen, if we were playing a mirror, the OS step would work the same way, as if we were to do one jab and the step left down 4-1, we would avoid jab, down 4-1, and up 4-1, which is some of the most common options to deal with such a setup. Next, we have empty sidesteps, which is a foundational tool of high-level Tekken, as is empty movement in general, and will be covered extensively later on. By doing step in the block, which is considered to be empty as you made no commitment to anything, we can bait the opponent into doing homing moves, many of which are often highs, to create a massive punish opportunity. Looking at Shaheen again, by using empty sidesteps, we can bait him into doing his forward 4, a fast high homing move. When we have conditioned him to do as such, we can duck or we can press, as homing moves follow certain rules of speed, which will be covered later on. This is part of the Tekken RPS, which will be the most important video in this entire series. Essentially, at a fundamental level in Tekken, any action you take gives up certain parts of the RPS triangle, with one exception which satisfies all parts of said triangle, empty forward dash. But back to our current topic, using empty sidestep at the correct frame carries zero risk besides giving up frames, unless the opponent pressed or took another option, which would often lead to them being punishable. Lastly, we have steps for positioning. This is simply movement you take to get off the wall or get away from a position on the stage that isn't to your liking, but you can also use it to put the opponent in a worse position. A common use of the technique is known as ladder stepping, where you can cancel a step into a forward or back dash into another step to quickly adjust your positional axis. You must experiment with the types of steps at your disposal, and they will be further covered soon. But that's all for this one. Catch you later or not.